Sir Vijay Praneshwaran, who is going to speak about the topic fake news and the need for its regulation in the Indian context. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome, sir. So the floor is all yours.
Yeah, before I start, I want everybody to switch on their videos. A little better. Yeah, everybody. Not bad, Shivani. Our students listen.
I had given a heads up.
Fine. Encourage. Okay. That's nice. So shall we begin? Okay. I see Shivani shaking her head. Okay, thank you. At least one of you is responding, not are responding. So at least one is attentive and one is listening. That's a good sign, and that's quite encouraging, at least one. Okay. The topic of today is fake news and the need for regulation. Before going into regulation aspect, let's understand what is fake news. Shivani, can you just read out the topic as it is, just for the convenience?
Sure. Yeah. So the topic is fake news and the need for its regulation in the Indian context.
Fake news and the need for its regulation in the Indian context. Okay, good. Because why I wanted to make it clear was fake news, when we are talking about fake news, and good that we did not add media, the word media into it, because that would have restricted the scope of this topic very, very much. And again, it will go into the history as if media is being targeted, because fake news is not restricted to media alone. At the same time, fake news is not only about common people or anybody other than media doing it. Both are equally hand in glove or party to this concept of fake news. Okay, so, but nevertheless, we will see it from both the media's perspective and the general perspective, in the sense that we will be seeing fake news as fake news, not from only media's perspective or fake news from the media. It could be anyone who is spreading fake news. Now, this concept of fake news is catching up a lot, and that is because of the repercussion that it is causing. Not that fake news did not exist. Fake news has been existing from times immemorial. Even before the printing press was invented. Give me a moment. That was a technical glitch. Okay, even before printing press was there, so fake news is nothing new to this age. It has been there. It has also grown over a period of time, along with the development of communication channels, along with media. But what makes it so important, what makes it so relevant, and what makes it so dangerous today is because in the age of internet and social media, the dissemination of information is fast. It is almost real time. One, it is real time, fast. Second, the reach. Think of 50 years back, if I wanted to publish a fake news, all in the midnight, either I have to go or I, along with few of my friends, go in the midnight and write whatever we wanted to write on the walls. Or maybe a little later, maybe 10, even then, or maybe 10, 20 years later, we could print pamphlets and distribute it. But then this had a very, very limited, it was not real time, number one, and it had a very limited reach. But today, with internet and social media, the type of people and the quantum of people receiving this information is huge, tremendously huge. That is what is making it dangerous. Of course, the inherent fake in the news is also contributing to it. That doesn't mean that if the news was true, it wouldn't cause such repercussions. Even if the news was true, it would still, under certain circumstances, cause a lot of repercussions. But fake, because it is fake, raises all the more eyebrows. So, and this concept of fake news is not restricted to media, predominantly not media, but then it is also non-state actors, state actors, non-state actors, and media. When I'm talking about state actors, it is even the government sometimes plans fake news. You should be surprised about that. And I'm not talking about the Indian context. It is throughout the universe. Then non-state actors. When we are talking about non-state actors, we are talking about institutions, people, individuals, organizations, apart from who are not state. And then, of course, media. Under non-state actors, we also make a subcategory called media. Media, why? Because they, as an organization, have a responsibility. They claim to be the fourth pillar. So they have all the more responsibility. So fake news can be generated or can come out from any of these entities. You'll be surprised, even state governments plant news, fake news, which is supporting their policies and principles. And of course, non-state actors, lesser the said, the better. Press, yes, even press too. Today's press, very selective, lot of fake also. That we will see the examples when we are discussing about. So this is a small introduction about what is fake news and what it has, or what is its ramifications. Now there are entities, or there are organizations, both NGOs or government agencies, which track these fake news. They have a mechanism to find out how or what is a fake news and what is not. Some of these organizations are called, one globally, one organization is called Snopes. Then in India, there is one organization called Social Media Hawks Slayer. They expose fake news. Now, talking about around the globe, one of the greatest, or which made a lot of news, is Russia's intervention or interference in US presidential election. If you recollect, there was a lot of animosity. There is a lot of non-acceptance of the results. This is one of the reasons. Trump felt, or Trump said, that a lot of unwanted information or was planted, or fake news was planted by the Russian government to influence the American voters. And it is a documented one. So fake news can have international. effects. So online manipulation, even in India also, Facebook was accused of uh, influencing the voters during the general elections. So like this, you have fake news being planted by all, including state, non-state, media, individuals, everybody. The reasons are very clear or very obvious. They have something, some vested interest in it. So how far it is right, how far it should be allowed, what should be done if it is to be allowed or if it is not to be allowed, how it is to be curbed. Of course, it should not be allowed. How this political misinformation, even economic misinformation, stock markets, big companies plant news so that their share prices go up, or you could have a competitor planting news to ensure that the competitors' companies' share prices fall. So you have plenty of reasons and plenty of places and plenty of sectors where news can be planted, fake news especially. So what is this fake news? It is also called as sometimes junk news, but when we say junk, we have this idea of junk meaning what is not important to us or what we don't want is junk. It could be fake or it could be real. But in media parlance, sometimes fake news is also referred to as junk news. It could be any misinformation, a disinformation, or a malinformation. All we are talking about is whether there is intention or no intention, whether it is done inadvertently or advertently. As long as an information which is not true, it is fake news. It could also mean morphing of images, old news turning out or being projected as new news. Recently, we had when we had this cyclone in Bombay, we had even before the cyclone could touch the shores, we had videos coming telling that this is how cyclone is causing. And later on, somebody clarified, no, this was 3 years back, some other cyclone. So that's a fake news. Then, in the current scenario, why this fake news is gaining momentum and a lot of people are kind of taking note of it is because in the pandemic world, a lot of fake news was circulated. In fact, so much fake news was circulated that it made the Director General of World Health Organization to respond and comment. And this is what he had to say. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, I hope I pronounced him right. I think Shivani can help me later because she's kind of an expert in pronouncing names, at least in SOLS. He is the Director General of World Health Organization. This is what he had to say. I quote, "We are not just fighting an epidemic. We are fighting an infodemic." This is a term he coined, infodemic. Fake news spreads faster and more easily than virus and is just as dangerous. This is what he had to say. Unquote. I will again read. We are not just fighting an epidemic, we are fighting an infodemic. Fake news spreads faster and more easily than this virus and is just as dangerous. Of course, he's been very kind saying that it is just as dangerous. I would say it is far more dangerous. Far, far, far more dangerous than this virus. So in the light of the COVID pandemic, we have seen telling that in the WhatsApp, we have received videos showing that a man or a woman somewhere in the corridor struggling and telling, and the caption would be, there are no beds. We do not know what for that person is creating the ruckus. But then we presume, and unfortunately, we humans, and especially Indians, we believe press and we believe this communication to be true for its face value. We do not for a moment even think whether it is feasible, practicable. There have been so many times uh, videos doing the rounds. For a moment, we people refuse to think whether it is even practicable for such a thing to happen. But we believe that such a thing happened. It could be political parties planting very old videos or videos which are not connected with the incident at all, or putting it up as as an incident which happened in a rival political party. It could be NGOs planting these videos saying that government is not doing anything, especially with regard to the cremation. A lot, especially when we are talking about this COVID pandemic and this fake news, there was a spurt in fake news, be it be with regard to statistics as to the COVID mortalities and infections, then the type of response that the government is giving to COVID, what are the measures that it is doing, especially with regard to death, cremation, all sorts of news related with COVID. There was a lot of fake news, unfortunately. Why, we do not know. Could be there could be a lot of reasons and theories for it. It could be planted from outside. There could be a narrative being spread. Even we have seen fake news with regard to the agricultural, when the agricultural bills and the agricultural laws that came, and then you had protests, a lot of protests, and because of fake news. So anything that is not real, that is not true, and misinformation, or anything old which is planted, depicting it to be something else. Innumerable examples. I can give innumerable examples. Recent ones. Even if you open today, if you open your WhatsApp, you would have one or two fake news. For a moment, unfortunately, the kind of human psyche that we have, we tend to believe, because it is video, it is what we are seeing. We tend to, prima facie, we tend to believe. Educated people. Think about people who cannot differentiate between right and wrong, who blindly believe, because we live in cities, we live in an age, or we have this kind of education where we believe that morphing is possible. We believe, or we know, that videos can be manipulated. But there are, across the globe, so many people who think that this is not possible. So when video comes out, when there is a photo, then we see, then we think that it is true. And the repercussion that it causes is enormous, huge. It could be reporting out of context. That could also be a fake news, because that's the huge thing happening now. Outrageous headlines, captions, then having spelling mistakes, edited videos, memes. These are all classified as fake news. And this has become a very serious challenge to our society and to the law enforcement agencies, because it is causing a huge problem to law and order. I'll give you examples. When I give you examples, Muzaffarabad riots is one very good example, because of fake news, the entire riots, we can say, started because of fake news. Then the question arises, why? What do you get? What? Sometimes this is also referred to as yellow journalism when it comes to media, of course. But then a lot of times fake news can be attributed to sources other than media also. Now, yellow journalism means it is a style. It was a style. It started with New York. It's a style of newspaper reporting that emphasized sensationalism over facts. Uh, I don't know how many of you all would have seen that video. It happened about 15, 20 years back when Jayalalitha arrested or had Karnanidhi arrested. And the video was played again and again with all emphasis on sensationalization, trying to make out or show it to the world that a leader like Karnanidhi is being manhandled, and actually the he is not saying anything, but then voice was morphed to show that his anguish and his fear and all those things. The entire day. That's because that party owns a television channel. It's a very famous television channel down south, especially in Tamil Nadu. It's the leading number one television channel in Tamil Nadu. Played over again and again, sensationalizing, and because of it, the party went on to win the elections. So that's the effect of fake news and sensationalization. So yellow journalism. Why? They are published with an intent to either damage an agency or entity or a person, or on the contrary, to enhance your own image, or to gain financially or politically. The underlying principle is sensationalize it. And it is dishonest and outright fabricated. And of course, sometimes why press does this is to increase their viewership, and if it is newspapers, to increase their readership. Sensationalizing could also be termed as fake news. Now, examples of fake news and sensationalization. It is said that world over, in more than 18 countries, forces outside the country, because of these fake news and planted news, manipulated the elections of 18 countries, including US. I gave you the example of US. And it is said that even in the Indian elections was influenced because of this planting of fake news. Then you have China and Russia using this method to suppress dissent. Then in the Latin America, you have what is known as paid commentators. Government will plant, or usually government there, it is done by the government. You will have these paid government commentators will start speaking about good things about the government. And they are also called as opinion shapers. And these are planted, these are fake. Why? To drive a particular agenda, to have a particular policy, to speak about the government. It is also used to counter the critics. See, this is not about directly dealing with, somebody criticizes the government, somebody criticizes an organization, somebody criticizes a corporate entity, or somebody tells something about the corporate entity, and the corporate entity coming out, or that political entity or the government coming out in the open and defending it, that is different. But clandestinely planting these fake news, these so-called paid commentators, that is not acceptable. And both state and non-state actors are equally accountable for these kind of planting information. There's one statistics with regard to Mexico. In Mexico, they have close to about 75,000 automated accounts on Twitter to counter any criticism. Coming to India, I'll just read out a few examples of fake news, and some have caused a lot of damage. Some could be harmless, but nevertheless, it is fake news. I told you the Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013, a fake video fueled the communal riots. Then, I think this you would have all, Janagana Mana has won the UNESCO Best National Anthem award. All have got it. Correct? And again, Prime Minister Modi has been awarded the best Prime Minister by UN, whatever organization. These are all fake news. Then Dawood Ibrahim's property is worth 15,000 crores seized in Dubai. This is one of the fake news. Then President Kovind makes Twitter debut and gains 3 million followers in 1 hour. That was a fake news. Then Nostradamus has predicted the rise of a supreme leader. No marks for guessing who the supreme leader is. Of course, he has predicted that world will see a leader, but we do not know whether it is the leader who is supposed to be projected. Okay. Then there were videos of a dying woman being molested, and there is also a news about a fatwa, that is an edict, religious edict in Saudi Arabia, that men can eat their wives. Then when the new 2,000 rupee notes came, there was a fake news that 2,000 rupee had a chip and government can track. Then there was fake news about child kidnapping, which led to a lot of mob lynching in Bihar, Jharkhand. One happened in Maharashtra also. Suddenly in the night, when Sadhu was going, they caught him, they lynched him. So this fake news can happen, print media, electronic media, social media, anywhere. Word of mouth. That is why governments block internet. In Muzaffarnagar, when riots happened, internet was blocked. In Jammu and Kashmir, when situation went out of control, the internet was blocked. Even when Jammu and Kashmir, when government took the decision to convert it into a union territory, for a long time, almost, I think about 6 months, internet was blocked. This is for the reason, because a lot of fake and false information would lead to a lot of unrest and lead to a law and order problem. Of course, now, so this is the background about what is fake news, examples of fake news, and what they can cause. Of course, I will not deliberate too much upon the consequences. It is known. I don't have to dwell too much upon it. What happened in Muzaffarnagar? What happened? The child lynching, child kidnapping and lynching cases, and also we have an example of Janagana Mana being the best national anthem. Of course, that was harmless. Nothing happened. But then, communal violence to a large extent. Okay, especially when it involves the frenzy, the religious sentiments. We don't even for a moment think that whether this news is right or wrong, it is planted. We are overcome with emotions and we start taking law into our hands. So, not going too much into the consequences. So this gives you a fair idea of what fake news is and what it can cause. What are the examples? Now, identifying this, the Bureau of Police Research and Development has kind of created a small manual for the law enforcement agencies. See, even law enforcement agencies, it's very difficult for them to find out how. You need professionals for them. A normal police person, when he receives it, will not be able to. So this Bureau of Police Research and Development established a small manual for all law enforcement organizations to recognize fake news. Again, we will not delve into that. In fact, I remember in Bangalore also, we claim to be very cosmopolitan, very advanced and all these things. A lot of times fake news was being circulated, and no less than the commissioner of police had to counter it with an SMS telling that no, these are all fake news. Please don't believe these things. Nothing of that sort has happened. Please don't believe. Don't go into it. Don't read those. Don't circulate them, because it will cause a huge law and order problem. Lots and lots of lives are lost. Elections are won and lost. Of course, to some extent, now with the government telling that, again, this fake news also with regard to WhatsApp itself. If you get a third blue tick, that means government is watching. I'm not very sure about exact thing, but this is what. Of course, we know that if it is a single tick, that means it is gone from your mobile or your instrument. If it is a double tick, the person whom you have intended to send has received it. If it turns blue, they have seen it. Then further, if there's a third tick, that means government is watching. If the third tick also turns blue, then the government is coming after you. This again is fake news. Then, of course, a lot of fake news comes that so-and-so is sick. And if you forward this message for every forward, Facebook or WhatsApp will give you so much, they will give them so much money. And then you have this fake news telling that iPhone is going to give free. We know it is fake, but we still try our chance. Why not? If we get, you never know. Don't we? So some are harmless, but you never know. We think it is harmless. You never know. These harmless fake news may carry a Trojan, which is going to embed into your system. And you never know whether China or Russia is watching you. You never know. As we are speaking now, China will be listening whatever I'm telling. And not only me speaking, all of you are nodding your head in agreement. China is watching that also. So be careful. Okay. So coming to the regulation part. We still do not have any specific legislation to curb this fake news, whether media or otherwise. Then we fall back on the general laws. Of course, we have Article 19 and the restrictions imposed on freedom of speech under Article 19. Everything flows from there. With regard to fake news and curbing it, because your freedom of speech should not be against public order. So from that, every general law that is made applicable to such a situation flows from that restriction. Of course, decency, morality, all this counts. Fake news was also about touching a little bit on Information Technology Act. When you circulate images, when you circulate photos, of course, under Information Technology Act, even if it is not fake, even if it is true, but if it is not in what is known as in the prurient interest, that means if it is dissatisfactory, whether sexually or otherwise, you could still be charged. That apart, we are restricting ourselves to fake news and use of Information Technology Act also. So drawing the theory or a concept from Article 19, the restriction, reasonable restriction, you have specific laws. Of course, these are general laws, not specifically to fake news, but then you can interpret this scenario of fake news and attract these provisions. IPC, Information Technology Act, Disaster Management Act. These are three main legislations wherein currently the government and the law enforcement agencies are resorting to curb or to counter fake news, or not necessarily counter, to charge people who have violated or who have committed an offense by publishing fake news. Yeah, to begin with, the Information Technology Act, Section 66D, it says, whoever by means for any communication device or computer resources cheats, by personating shall be punished. Again, this is generally worded. This is not about specifically fake news. So it says that whoever, by means of any communication, device or computer resources, cheats by personating. So this is again a general provision. So if you use any electronic device and you are publishing a false news, when I say publishing, again, don't have a very restricted meaning to the word publish. Publish means when you make it known to someone other than you is publishing. Most of us think publishing means you have to have a press and then you should make 1,000 copies. Okay. Publish simply means making it known to somebody else other than you. And sometimes courts have even held that even if nobody has seen and if there is an intention, if it is already in the domain and it is still published. So especially here, you should, as students, you should be very careful when you forward messages. We think these are harmless messages and we forward them. Before forwarding any message, be careful. Then you have Section 54 of the Disaster Management Act, which says, whoever makes or circulates a false alarm or warning as to disaster or its severity or magnitude leading to panic. Now, where did this 54 come is because of pandemic. In fact, Supreme Court has authorized in the sense in one of its orders has told that Section 54 can be invoked if there is any false information or fake news being spread or being published by anyone. This is in the background when the Supreme Court of Justice, the then Chief Justice Bobde, they took up this suo motu matter with regard to statistics about COVID, information about COVID, the number of deaths, the number of infections and all these things. And a lot of people were accusing the government of telling that we are all morphed and they are all adjusted figures. In that, when I think Solicitor General, Tushar Gandhi was there, when he was arguing, Supreme Court very clearly stated that in such a scenario, this provision can be invoked. Section 54 of the Disaster Management Act can be invoked. But then this is very specific to any pandemic or any disease or any disaster. This cannot be applied in a general situation. Under the current situation, if the news is with regard to any disaster or any pandemic which is false, which has been circulated with regard to the disaster or severity, magnitude, which has the potentiality of causing a panic, then Section 54 will be attracted. And remember, these provisions are not mutually exclusive. They will file everything. So you will be charged under 66D. And if it is a news, something which is connected with the pandemic, also 54 of the Disaster Management Act. Then you have some general provisions of IPC. One is Section 153, Indian Penal Code, which says, whoever malignantly or wantonly, by doing anything illegal, gives provocation to any person intending or knowing it likely that such provocation will cause the offense of rioting to be committed. See, the reading is very clear. This is not about fake news. This is any act which is malignant and wantonly, which is illegal. Of course, this provision also can be used to charge a person spreading fake news. Then you have Section 499 and 500 of Indian Penal Code, which says, whoever by words either spoken or intended to be read or by signs or by visible representations makes or publishes any imputation concerning any person intending to harm or knowing or having reasons to believe that such imputation will harm the reputation of such person. So if it is against, the news is against any person, against his reputation, 499 and 500. Then 505 clause 1, which says, whoever by making, publishing or circulating any statement, rumor or report which may cause fear for an alarm to the public or to any section of the public shall be punished, it goes on. So these are some statutory provisions through which at present state can take action. But then you see the first two, even not even first two, the first one that is under the Information Technology Act, which says that 3 years imprisonment. Otherwise, all others are minor offenses. Even under Disaster Management Act, the maximum punishment is 1 year. And it says 1 year or fine. So you can still pay fine and get away. Again, section 153 IPC is 6 months or fine. Then 505 is 3 years or fine. Again, 499 and 500 are again 2 years or fine. See, the moment, I hope you know interpretation of statutes, the moment the word or is used, it is either this or that. So the court will have the discretion to either give fine or imprisonment. And most of these times, the court may take a lenient view and give only fine. So it may not be an effective tool, except for section 66D, where imprisonment and fine. Otherwise, other provisions may not be effective, but then at present, there's no other alternative. These are only the provisions available. Then you have a certain associations, agencies, professional agencies, which can take action. Again, action here may not be punishment, it may not be an offense, but nevertheless, you could have some sort of restriction or action being taken on people disseminating fake news. You have what is known as in India, News Broadcasters Association. So if any fake news is telecast in news channels, you can file a complaint with them. And of course, at the most, they will ask that fake news to be removed, or they may impose a fine, or they may blacklist the channel. No penal provision. Then you have Indian Broadcast Foundation. Again, it is about any abuse or content which is very violence prone. You can make a complaint. Again, at the most, they will ask that portions to be removed, or they will fine that particular production agency or the channel. Then the third, you have Broadcasting Content Complaint Council. It deals with TV content. So anything which is fake or which incites communal hatred, encourages violence against women, child abuse, or promotes any consumption of drugs. Basically, we are talking about fake news. Then fourth, you have Press Council of India, which concerns the newspaper, that is the print media. They can warn the newspaper agencies, news agencies, or editor or journalist or disapproving of their content. So these are organizational restrictions. Of course, these are not penal, but you have some sort of restriction or some sort of remedial measures which is currently available. Then you also have, of course, a couple of efforts were made to bring in some sort of legislation to curb this fake news. One was in 2018, when the government tried to amend this guideline called Guidelines for Accreditation of Journalists. It's a government guideline for accreditation of journalists to tackle fake news. And it said that if they are accused of any fake news, their accreditation will not be renewed. But the irony was, within 15 hours of its proposal, it was withdrawn because of protests from journalists telling that this is authoritarian. I, let us not go into whether it is authoritarian or not, but this is a fact. Then, way back in 1988, the Rajiv Gandhi government tried to bring in the defamation bill, because at that point of time, a lot of news was being published regarding Bofors and other corruption. So the Rajiv Gandhi government tried to bring in the defamation bill. It aimed at curtailing this publishing of news. May not be strictly fake news, but any news which is not confirmed. Again, this bill also did not see the light of the day, because as far as I have seen, any effort by any government to even bring in any kind of regulation or law with regard to press, then a mayhem starts, and it's like the press is beyond law and you cannot regulate them, and or they are very skeptical about any law that is being brought in against the press. Somehow press media think that they are synonym to Article 19 clause 1. I don't know, I don't subscribe to that. Press and media should also function very responsibly. You should have a regulation. If the way out could be, let the press themselves suggest a draft bill, if that is the case, because nobody is above the law. We live in a world where there is rule of law. That's my take. Nevertheless, okay, going forward, see, these legislations, these laws currently are not enough, especially in the kind of age we live, in the kind of communication channels that we have in the internet age, social media, WhatsApp, Twitter, Insta, mails, videos. It's not enough. Stringent measures are required. A law must be enacted, because those days are gone when we had IPC and IPC could take care of everything. Now, for everything, we have special laws. And here also, maybe I feel that after having gone through this, there must be a law to curb fake news, some definitions, some stringent measures, some regulation. A comprehensive legislation, separate legislation is definitely required. Otherwise, going ahead, because there is no special legislation and because there is no stringent measures, we try to take it lightly and start forwarding messages, because you don't have repercussion, you don't have consequences. So you want to take your chances. This is at the very common man level. At the higher level, whether state actors or non-state actors, this lacuna is being made use of to publish fake news relentlessly and reap their illegal consequences. That's not to be approved. Then there is one writ petition, public interest petition pending before Supreme Court, filed by one Anuja Kapoor. She's a kind of a public spirited citizen. She's filed quite a few PILs. She's filed a PIL before Supreme Court, which is pending, asking the apex court to direct the center to frame rules, guidelines, and also present a legal framework for stopping this counterfeit news and punishing those who are liable for creating and circulating them. According to the petitioner, what the petitioner says is this kind of dissemination of fake news, especially on the online media, is causing enormous harm, and according to her, it is also encroaching on the citizens' right to impartial and honest news. These are a couple of grounds that the petitioner has made out before the court. It is pending. So let's see what happens. I will sum it up. I will end with this quote. Listen carefully. If you don't listen carefully, you will not catch it. Separate text from context, and all that remains is a con. I will repeat. You need to listen carefully and understand. Write it down. You will understand. Separate text from context, and all that remains is a con.
What if someone has only one phone?
See, it's very true, because most of the times I have personally seen, when I say personally seen, I've seen certain incidents. I've seen the way it was reported in news was totally different, very contextual, and most of the times press reports out of context. Especially the speeches that people make, you take it out of context, blow it up, and say this is what he told. In fact, he would have used that word, those words nevertheless, but then in altogether a different context, in altogether a different meaning, but then it is shown in different meaning. And I've also had a personal experience, but then I will not tell that, with regard to separate text from context and all that remains is a con. That's it. Any questions? Shivani, you are not prepared them for questions, is it?
I did, in my defense. Guys, any questions? Anyone?
So one question. Yeah. So
Please identify yourself and start.
Sir, Chinmay here, sir.
Oh, I should have guessed. Okay, tell me.
Considering how like you as well mentioned in the, in the entire lecture about the fact that there are various narratives that take place on both the sides, probably from the government side to spread their propaganda, and the other from the opposition or the liberal side to maybe spread propaganda or to bring out the false news. How do people as the spectator of both these news and the receiver of both these news, what can we do to help ourselves be more aware? How do we, or what sites, what websites would probably provide us with neutral information and actual facts and stuff, and how do we make ourselves more aware of this?
See, in today's media world, there is nothing called a neutral news channel or a website or whatever. They have one leaning or the other. But how do you counter this, or how do you understand this? Is very simple. First thumb rule is, don't take any news for its face value. Even if it is reported in a reputed news agency, newspaper, news, I am not asking you to disbelieve either. Please understand carefully. I am not asking you to disbelieve. I am neither asking you to believe it totally. Read 2 or 3 more different versions of it. Sometimes even that may not be enough. Then here is where for KSLU students, there was one subject called Elements of Research. In that, one topic was legal materials. There, what is told was, you must go to the authentic source. For example, say in fact, fake news, when we are talking about fake news, you know how many times fake news has come with regard to the government of Karnataka issuing guidelines bearing the signature of the chief secretary. See, every Saturday or every 15 days, they used to revise these guidelines. 3 or 4 times, guidelines purportedly issued by the person in charge of managing this pandemic, that is, I think, the chief secretary, usually under his seal and signature, the guidelines are issued, has come. In such a scenario, don't believe it. You have to wait for the authentic source. Where you verify it in the authentic source, you have government websites. So if it is something related to government, something related to law, you can verify it like that. If it is any other general news, wait for some more time for other versions to come and match these versions. All versions will not be identical. They will use certain mismatches. There'll be something more, something less. That is where you, as an educated person, especially as a legal professional, because we have a duty towards society. When a common man says something, people may not believe it. But if Chinmay is telling that, oh, yes, this is what has happened, I have seen it, I have seen the video, then they have a lot of respect for you in legal professionals, thinking that they know and they will speak the truth. So they tend to believe us a lot. So when we make statements or when we forward these messages, let us not do it without verifying. We have to apply our logic, reasoning, verify it, confirm it, discuss, and then subscribe to this. First acceptance and then subscribe. This is not happening. The moment we get some video, some news, we accept it for its face value. First is, do not accept anything that comes as a news for its face value unless you have verified its source and it is authentic.
Thank you, sir. This question was because of the fact that with respect to the Bengal violence that took place after the elections, there are a lot of narratives that took place that, the government itself, that is the BJP cell itself, attacked their own people and then said that it was Mamta's side who did it. And then there was the opposition with it, similar things. So that was like a whole new narrative that came into the forefront. That's why I asked this question.
No, this keeps on coming. So don't believe either side. Wait. If that is the case, keep it open. Keep your options open. Don't believe either side, because we do not know. And nobody has verified it. Wait for some authorized agencies. See, when I mean authorized agency, the governments will appoint a commission of inquiry. We have to go wait till then. That way, the narratives, the greatest narrative was the Gujarat riots narrative. Do you remember there was one photo of one man with a very frightened. Do you even know in what context that photo was taken? We do not know. But that was the entire Gujarat riots thereafter was used. And now presently with the current, I will give you a current example also. With Stan Swami's death. You know what is the narrative? He was not given a zipper and a straw. And government killed him. This is the narrative going on. What was the circumstances? When was he given? Why was he not given? When did he make an application? Till then, what was he doing? All that we don't even think about these possibilities. The moment this comes, oh yes, government has killed him, we come to the conclusion. No, don't come to the conclusion. I'm not telling that government has not done anything at all. I also do not. All I'm trying to say is, keep it open. Don't conclude with half-baked or out of context information. Verify it. How you verify it, it depends on how much time you involve, you put into it, research and all those things. Go for an authentic source, go to a government website or go to the court website, try to find out orders. take out news reports. Even Wikipedia for that matter. Don't dismiss Wikipedia. Of course, you cannot use it as a source, but then it's a very good source for Prime just to know the initial information. Thereafter, you need to develop and verify it. One advantage of Wikipedia is it gives you all the information in one place. But then most of you, what you do is you restrict only to them, think that whatever is stated is right. No, confirm whatever is stated. So even newspaper articles also, I'm neither asking you to accept it. Actually, I'm asking you not to accept it. I'm also asking you not to discard it. Read. You are an educated professional. You know reasoning. You can apply logic. Preponderance of probabilities. In law, we use, if you don't get the actual authentic source, then you will have to resort to what is known as preponderance of probabilities, whether this is possible under the given situation. Use all these things, then come to an understanding that this could have happened. Even then, unless you are completely sure, don't make a blatant confirming statement if you are not sure, and don't forward it in the second place.
Thank you, sir.
So can I ask one question?
Yeah, go ahead, Jusang.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. So I don't. My name is Chusang.
Chusang, yes.
Sir, I don't know if this question is relevant, but this question has always been bothering me. So this is about the international thing, because if a country tries to defame another country in their national TVs and defame that country and brainwash the people about the perception of that country, is there any any way to approach international platforms to complain about this?
We don't, at the international level, we don't have, see, again, this is propaganda. You cannot do it. They will publish it in their channels within their country controlled. I know in what context you're telling. But then, yes, a lot, in fact, I even named it. In fact, a lot of propaganda, planted news happens. But fake news with regard to, again, regulation, international, very difficult. You have to counter it with truth. But then with the might of that country, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the resources. Unfortunately, yes. But then, see, in the longer run, people will come to know. You may reap short-term benefits, but in the long run, everybody knows that that country is interested. That is why it is planting. Otherwise, internationally, there is nothing much you can do about it. And it's of no use also. Where you are going to go? Are you going to go to Security Council? They have veto power there. Are you going to go to International Court of Justice or any of the international organizations? They are not bothered. But then you have to relentlessly counter it with the right news.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, sir. This is Priyadarshini. I have one doubt. Sir, you said that we need stringent measures, and one of the stringent measures which was taken by the government is why they proposed this IT rules. I think even Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad said that we need the whole reason for us to propose this IT rules is because of the spreading of fake news and morphed images of women and stuff. And if we consider certain rules itself, those rules say that misleading, any news that is misleading or any information or content that is misleading, obscene, and defamatory or anything. And all of these terms have been challenged in a lot of petitions that have been filed by the petitioners in the Supreme Court or High Court, anywhere, and they have said that this does not fall under reasonable restrictions. So how do you think the government can make any measure if everything is going to be challenged in the name of reasonable restriction? And it is true, right? Like, they do have a valid reason. They are saying that this does not fall under reasonable restrictions. It is true, because you are doing a pre-censorship in the name of misleading and everything. So how do you think we can tackle that, and how can the government make measure if that's the case?
I did make a reference to this. Press, especially media, thinks they are Article 19. That's wrong. Somehow they think that they are the epitome of Article 19, and Article 19 was made for media. No, media is also answerable to the reasonable restrictions. But unfortunately, the kind of lobby that they have in terms of both political, economical, social, everything. See, when any law is tried to be brought in, even before we understand or read that law, a lot of narratives come in the press. That is also fake news. Even you take examples of these agricultural laws. You have not read, I have not read. We protest, saying that the law is bad. We don't even know what the law is, because we go by the narrative that is put in the press, what is published. Similarly, when this being the case with other sectors, when a law is tried to be brought in to counter or to restrict press itself, you can understand how much news they are going to plant. This is one thing. Secondly, as regards challenging these provisions, that is their right. It is constitution given right for you to challenge. Ultimately, the courts are there to decide whether they are reasonable restriction or unreasonable restriction. If they are reasonable restriction, they will sustain. If they are unreasonable restriction, they'll be overruled. Simple. Wait for the courts. You don't decide. Wait for the courts to decide. Right or wrong. Under the constitutional setup, we have created an independent autonomous body to resolve these kind of disputes. That is the court, judiciary. Wait for them to come to a finding, come to a conclusion, tell this is right, this is wrong. But having said this, I still say there needs to be a legislation. Otherwise, the repercussions and the calamities are going to be far, far, I'm not getting an adjective. Well, astronomical. Already we are seeing this. You know how many and see, these are strategic, and you will not understand. These narratives are being planted. Okay, you will ask my source. I will not say my source. Could be planted. I will rephrase. Could be planted from across the borders, especially with regard to. I will give one specific example. The way India handled COVID pandemic, the way India is handling COVID pandemic. You know how many narratives demeaning the way we handled, telling that, oh, what is happening? But if you compare with the magnitude of our population and the mortality and the infectious rate, we are one of the best countries. Even US, UK are not able to handle it. We are handling it. You have to understand with the kind of population that we have, with the enormity of population, still we are doing. But unfortunately, and we Indians being Indians, when something small happens, we forget the entire picture, and we try to magnify this small thing and make a big hangama out of it. Yes, when in normal circumstances, 10 people will die, or rather, okay, fine, let's say in a district, in normal circumstances, say about 20, I'm giving a very rough figures, about 20-25 people will die. To handle 20-25 people's death and cremation and funeral, you will have about 5 or 6 burial grounds and cremation grounds. Suddenly, if 600 people start dying in the district, how to manage? There's no point in simply blaming the government. And the government cannot establish proportionately crematory grounds. During that pandemic, you will have Thereafter, what are you going to do with that dead investment? You're going to increase the crematorium from 6 to 100, is it? And what will be the investment for that? That is why. But then that doesn't mean government did not do anything. Government did some makeshift. I'm talking pan-India, irrespective of what party or this one, everywhere. Made some arrangement, some stopgap arrangement. Of course, in a pandemic, in a special situation, in an emergency situation, you cannot expect normal everything, telling that the dead are not given decent burial. Yes, in a situation where we used to get about 25, 30 bodies, we are getting about 500 bodies. Yes, you need to have a public crematorium, open crematorium. All this was done. That is how it is handled. So we need to understand these things. Law is required. Why people plant these news? What is their benefit out of it? What is the quid pro quo? If it is not to be done, then there's a huge gray area where, like I said, the consequences are going to be astronomical. Already we are seeing. And of course, any law that is brought, there will always be a resistance, because it is human nature to resist anything new. And whether that law is right or wrong, it is for the courts to decide. Article 13 is there, power of judicial review. Courts will decide whether they are right or wrong. Wait till then. Don't judge. Don't come to conclusion. And press, it is wrong for the press to even before the law is enacted, to call the law draconian and authoritative, all these using of all these words, because they are very good at words and English literature and English language, Even before the law has seen its light, you start accusing the law to be, because you are apprehensive or you think you are above the law.
Sir, just a follow-up. Should we probably say that the law should focus more on accountability rather than censorship, to avoid all of these issues of Article 19 and all that?
Again, I think probably there is a misinformation thinking that these laws are going to stop you from publishing news. Nobody is going to stop you from publishing the news. Okay, even if they stop, you have your remedy in going to the courts. Yes, probably that is accountability in the sense that if it turns out to be fake, and if depending on what was the consequence, you must be liable. Probably the press is trying to portray this wolf telling that we are being restricted. No, if that is the case, then government can monopolize everything and take over like North Korea. See, that I don't think so. That is the intention. What you said is right. Yes, accountability in the sense that you must also take responsibility for the consequences, especially when it is fake. And if it is fake, what case do you have? If it is proved that the news that you have put is fake, what case you have to defend yourself? You don't. But then press probably is fearful of this because half their coffers run because of this. So it also involves a lot of money and TRPs and viewership and readership and all these things. Yes, the law should be comprehensive in the sense that it is not about it is not about gagging the press. It is about holding them liable if your news turns out to be fake.
Of course, if you stop them from saying it, it's gagging, and if you make them accountable, it's ragging. So either way, the law will be bad.
No, I don't think so. It is what governments have in mind, at least the present scenario. See, we have passed that stage where we have come out of that mentality. Even governments have come out of this mentality of gagging the press. Okay, those eras have gone long back. They have gone. But then press cannot continue to kind of live in that limelight and say that we cannot still be made even accountable. Yes, they have to be made accountable. Now, that's why I suggested let the press themselves come out with the draft law. Let there be self evaluation. Let them come out with law because they are also responsible. Suggest to the government.
Maybe even a press assisted public consultation. It could be like, never before event. And all of us could participate.
Yes, definitely. Press, in fact, I feel the press should take a initiative and say that what kind of law. See, the discussion or the moot point is not whether law is required or not. The moot point should be what should be the kind of law. That's my take.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, so should we close the session, sir? Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for addressing the students about a very important issue that was fake news and the need to regulate it in India. And I'm sure they got a very different perspective because usually in the class they hear something very different. So I'm sure all of them have enjoyed it. And I
hope I have not confused them from a different perspective from what you have told in class.
Not at all, sir. In fact, in class, we have a lot of circumstances where they are the ones who come up with points which are very relevant. So I'm sure they have it figured out in their head. And I think it makes sense when you say that don't agree to anything on the face value. It is important for us to be critical. It is important for us to be a little more self-aware about what is happening and then only confirm something or reject something. So I think that is something that we both agreed to. So,
sir, this is Muskan here. I have a question, sir.
Yes, Muskan.
So, will you be teaching us next year, sir?
Inshallah.
Hope so, sir. Really hope so. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so with that, we can close the session. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you to all the participants for joining. I'll see you in class tomorrow. Bye-bye.
It's a great place to end the session, Shivani.
Thank you.